He's defeated ninjas, assassins, mobsters, street thugs, the Hand, Bullseye, the Kingpin twice. Yes, Daredevil even survived having a building dropped on him. And yet, he was no match for a company whose original business model was to rent DVDs through the mail. Yes, Daredevil may be the man without fear, but unfortunately, he's now the man without a show. Marvel TV Weekly starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, yes, that's right. Some heads are going to roll, and unfortunately, it's all of our Netflix friends in the Marvel Universe. Welcome to Marvel TV Weekly. I am Christian Bladt, joined, as I am every single week, by the one and only Xia Anderson. And we have a special guest in studio. Thank you for joining us, Mark Hughes of Forbes.
Thank you for having me.
And also, I already forgot the other. I meant to write down the other thing, and then I didn't have
Superhero news.
That's what it was.
Sean Gerber.
I knew I was going to say it wrong, so I just throw it to you for that. Yes, and you wrote a very interesting piece about the cancellation of Daredevil, and so we'll kind of talk about all of these Netflix cancellations, but that is the big news since our last show, which, by the way, you may have missed our last show because it was on a Tuesday. I interviewed Amy Rutberg, who plays Marcy on Daredevil. Played Marcy on Daredevil, and at that point, there was a lot of hope and excitement for the possible season 4. The day before, Eric Olson, the showrunner, had pitched season 4 to Netflix, and she told me off the air, which now I can say, everybody felt like there was a solid 50-50 chance that the show was going to come back, and that is not the way it happened, unfortunately. We found out just a couple days later. But if you'd like to see that interview, go ahead and look for the archive here on AfterBuzz, the Sci-Fi Superheroes channel. But so that was the big news, Daredevil getting canceled. I think, Xia, we all thought it could very well happen, especially after both Iron Fist and Luke Cage. I think maybe it was just because I had just talked to Amy/Marcy, the day before. The timing surprised me a little bit. Did you think that maybe it was going to take a little while before they decided? Because to get pitched and then it's gone the next day,
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering if it's partially because I'm sure this had nothing to do with their decision-making process, but the fact that they didn't want them to go through the process of writing the entire show and really getting that far into the process of it and being like, no, actually, we're not going to pick up a 4th season.
Well, I don't know how much they would care about that. And let me ask you, Mark, my understanding is that Luke Cage's writer's room was actually pretty far along and had written scripts for season 3. I've heard that somewhere, let's just put it that way. And I know for a fact, though, that this Daredevil writer's room was open and they had broken the season and, to help Eric be able to pitch it.
Right.
So they all had jobs. They went in that day and then they were told that, so... I mean, I don't know if you even know. I would assume like Marvel Studios kind of foots the bill on stuff like that with the idea like, yeah, you guys will probably come back. Sure, we'll bring you on for a couple weeks. Or did that come up in any of your research and writing about this?
You mean in terms of
having writers actually working and breaking the stories before Netflix had actually renewed the show?
Yeah, I think what happens is it's important to remember there's a lot of inertia when it comes to making TV and when it comes to making movies, and so there's a lot of pieces that are still kind of moving. Like after Disney bought Fox, for example, there were a lot of projects that realistically, when the deal went through, were going to end up not being made, perhaps. But you don't just stop on the assumption that a year from now another company's taking over. So people continue to work as if there's a future until they find out there's not.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people probably felt like there's a chance that things will go, that it'll work out. But honestly, looking at the tea leaves for the last few weeks, I've been pretty certain that this is the direction it was going to go, and I'm pretty sure that I don't think I'm shocking anybody to say unless something really significant changes, we're not going to see a new season of Jessica Jones after next year. It'll be the last season. The Punisher, that's going to be the last season, and the Netflix Marvel shows are going to stop.
Yeah.
So even though they haven't announced that yet, and there might be people that are still kind of like, well, technically we haven't heard there's not going to be season 4, so maybe we'll continue working until we find out we shouldn't continue working. But I think enough of the dominoes have fallen that now everyone pretty much knows for sure where this is headed. So I don't think that'll happen again, where you'll have anyone, working on episodes and planning a season 4 and a season 5 of anything under the assumption that it's really going forward.
Yeah, I think at this point the expectation would be, nobody writes a word for season 4 of Jessica Jones unless somehow, for some reason, they decide that that's the one they want to bring back.
I don't think they're trying. I think they're trying not to waste anybody's time, and so as soon as they can, they're going ahead. I actually thought, because of the reaction from the announcement about Iron Fist and Luke Cage, I thought they're not going to make the Daredevil announcement. It's the season 3 had got such strong positive reaction, and they've got 2 more shows coming. I thought they were maybe going, the reaction was so negative and people are so worried, maybe we'll just save it, and then after the new year, or after even Jessica Jones season 3 premieres, then we'll announce that we're not going to do Daredevil. I didn't expect it to come as quickly as it did. That caught me off guard. I thought it was going to be after the new year, so I was not looking at it right. I thought it was several weeks away before the official word was going to come down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to, thanks for pitching us season 4, giving them the courtesy of at least the attempt, because they probably had their mind made up. It's like, sure, let's see what he has planned. And, the writers from the room, obviously they're a little biased, but they said that people would have been so excited about what they had planned. But I get, just the idea of wasting everybody's time.
I believe him, by the way, because everything the work that they've done so far, I completely believe that everyone was probably blown away by what they pitched in the room. Yeah. So I have no idea what it was.
Right. Yeah. No.
Just kudos to the work that they've already done.
Right. Exactly. I mean, the quality was there, and it's just I liked all 3 seasons of Daredevil. I to varying degrees, I like all the seasons of everything. I'm on the short list that I liked both seasons of Iron Fist, and I really enjoy all these shows. And I was just expecting more and thinking they'd be great. Now, one of the interesting things is that in the announcement, Marvel kind of promises more Daredevil adventures, which I think people take to mean, okay, so that show's going to end up somewhere else. But I'm just like, no, they're like, okay, well, now we can make a Daredevil movie. We couldn't make a Daredevil movie after the Ben Affleck one, but now that we've had this show, let's sit on, you got to wait a few years. But, the idea of doing a Daredevil movie, I don't know, do you think that, is that more likely what you think they're talking about, Xia?
That's kind of what I was thinking, or maybe an appearance in movies. I was thinking something along those lines. I can't remember if this was just a comment that I read or if it was an article I read, because I feel like I've been reading so many. That somebody mentioned recasting. They would do that if they recasted. Well,
yeah, I think that if they did a movie, they wouldn't have Charlie Cox play Daredevil. They would probably get a movie star.
I would be really disappointed. I would love to see Charlie Cox be Daredevil.
He's great.
I think he's fantastic, and I think that it would bring already the audience of people who loved him as Daredevil, and plus a new audience of being like, well, we're just going to go see the next Marvel movie.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Mark? Do you think that
I hate to disappoint people who are hoping that it points toward the show continuing or a movie, but my understanding at this point is that we're probably going to see Daredevil, for example, show up in the Punisher series. He might make an appearance there. I'm not for certain, but that could be what they're talking about.
Right, and it could also have already been shot. You know, I think they might have finished the Punisher. That's my understanding. They could be like, you'll see him again. Because we already shot it. Yeah, that's true.
I'm under the impression that's what it is. And that just kind of generally, they're also talking about the fact that they're going to continue hosting the seasons that are already there. Yeah. Netflix isn't just going to pull them off the air and be like, no, you don't get to watch them anymore.
No, because you still get to see them. They spend an obscene amount of money on them. Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the piece that brought to my attention the idea of having you here. And, if you hadn't been available, I would have really leaned heavily on this article anyway.
Thank you for having me on. I meant to say that at the start of the show.
Sure. And that piece is called The Real Reasons, plural, Netflix is canceling the Marvel shows. Now, as soon as this happens, it's the same thing that happened after Iron Fist and then Luke Cage, is the idea Disney wants to save these shows for Disney Plus. And what I said back then, I also said last week, was, these are produced for Netflix. It's a really complicated deal. It's like, taking a network show from CBS and moving it to ABC or any variation on that. You can do it, but there's a lot of moving parts, and there's usually more money involved than anybody wants to spend. So I didn't see that happening. But let's just start off with we'll go through all the reasons because it's an hour show. So what do you think is the starting point, the kind of the most important reason to first start with as to why Netflix is canceling these shows?
I think if I had to say, I would say everyone's pointing at Disney Plus as the primary reason, and it's certainly a big deal that Disney with the movies, they wanted to get everything back in house. They didn't want other studios distributing their stuff. They want to distribute. They want to make it, distribute it. It's just them and the consumer. That's what they want, and I respect that. But they have the deal with Netflix, and so I think it was assumed that now that Disney's going to have their own service, they're not going to want to continue making the stuff. And from Netflix's standpoint, well, why continue putting shows on the air that are essentially promoting the brand of a competing service? So for both of them, it was kind of a moment when I think their own what they wanted and expected is kind of converging for both of them, that Disney wants all their stuff under their own control and Netflix doesn't want to be spending, Daredevil's like 40 to 45 million dollars a season.
Yeah.
They're spending $3 to $3.5 million per episode on these shows. So when you think about putting that kind of money into a series, if you're Netflix and you've got Millar World, which has, there's some really terrific stuff that's going to come from the deal that they have with Mark Millar, they're going to have their own shared universe of characters and stuff. So I think, honestly, the primary motivation for Netflix was people who are watching these Netflix Marvel shows are also watching stuff like BoJack Horseman or, Haunting of Hill House. Those viewers are going to be there, and the Marvel shows aren't keeping a notable, like a big group of people who otherwise don't watch Netflix but just watch those shows. So if you're Netflix, put that money into other original content and IPs that you have more control over from a partner who, with Marvel, I don't think that it's an animosity thing, but I think just realistically, Marvel's going to have their own service. They're putting all their content on there, so make stuff that's closer that you have in your own pocket instead of something for them, and they want it. They'd rather have that stuff back and do it all themselves anyway, so it's kind of best for both parties. So it was a convergence of those things, I think.
Yeah, and for Netflix, in 3 years ago when Daredevil premiered, that was a little bit of a draw. Like, hey, we're going to have all of these Marvel shows. Obviously there was a lot of original content already in 2015, but it's nothing compared to the way it is now, where just people will talk about Netflix shows that you've never even heard of. There was a fake commercial about it last night on Saturday Night Live because Claire Foy from The Crown was on, and they just I think that the goal was in the joke fake commercial was that the scroll where you're looking through all the new shows would be never ending, because by the time you got to the end of it there'd be new shows, so that it was just basically to infinity. And obviously it's very funny, but you're like, yeah, that's kind of about right, because if you just look at what they recommend you watch and what is any of this stuff? It could all be great. Even if half of it's great, you're like, I don't have time to watch it. But even in 2015, there was a little bit more. But to have a big, we're doing this stuff with Marvel. I already had Netflix, but I was very excited to know that it was going to be coming there. What about you, Xia? Is this, let's just say you weren't doing shows where you talk about all the Marvel shows. Would you have jumped in on Netflix for these, or you had it anyway, right?
I had it anyway. I'm just wondering.
Not just for Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Not just for Sabrina the Teenage Witch, no. I had Netflix since you were getting it for DVDs to be sent to you. That's when I had Netflix. So
which, by the way, you can still do. People just don't realize it.
Yeah. But why would you?
Well, because there's a lot of stuff that's not on the streaming service. But anyway. Yeah. So that's actually why.
And Blockbuster is dead. I used to go there too. Don't judge me. Okay. So I was a Netflix, and I want to have Netflix. I wonder if that's going to split the audience at least a little bit of people that want both, that have Netflix and want the Disney Plus service, but can't afford to have both. So they kind of have to choose one or the other, and they have to weigh that, am I a bigger Marvel fan, or do I want more of what Netflix has? Because it's,
Yeah,
it
but
gets
I mean,
expensive.
It definitely adds up, and it's so funny because of the idea of everybody wanted to cut cords and not pay cable bills anymore. But if you have all these streaming services, you're spending more.
You're spending
and
more.
Then if you're me and you also have cable, then it's just before you know it, you're just like, look at all of it, and and it's look, there's great content on Hulu, including the Runaways, which we'll
I
talk about a little bit later.
also have, by the way.
And
it's like
I have Amazon Prime because I want the free shipping.
I also have that.
And they
This is
throw it in with the
crazy.
free shipping. So it's like, but they all have shows that I'm like, honestly, Amazon Prime is probably the one where I'm like, I'd get by without some of those shows. But
I'm gonna need to go back and rewatch Doctor Who every so often.
yeah,
so I
but that's
need
all
it
right.
for that.
There you go. So that's a good reason. But there's a little bit of a reason for everything, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's great that Disney Plus is gonna have Star Wars. Oh, but there's gonna be multiple Star Trek series on CBS All Access.
Yes.
So there, everybody's putting something out there that they know is gonna want to get you in.
But
right?
I think there's something that's going on is when you talk about there's the CBS as well, and there's the Amazon, CBS, Hulu, Netflix. If people are making that choice about which streaming service, okay, I want Disney Plus, but I've got to drop something, Netflix is not going to be the first choice that most people drop, I don't think, because you're talking about a subscriber base that is enormous. Their worldwide subscriber base is ridiculously large.
Yeah.
So when you've got over 100 million worldwide subscribers, if they lose, I'll be shocked if they even lose a few million people when Disney starts up. I won't be shocked if Hulu and Amazon and others take a bigger hit. I don't think it'll be enough to knock any of those out, but I think it'll be more than people are expecting at the moment.
Right, and it would probably
you can't cut Netflix.
You could see a little bit more of a direct correlation for some of the smaller ones, like a new one like the DC Universe that people have for a couple of shows, but they can also read comic books on that. But you could see that would be a fan base that's like, oh yeah, no, I want these new Marvel shows, and so I won't renew the DC one. So
see, I want DC just to watch that new Titans show, but I'm not going to get it
because
just to watch
the
new
trailer
Titans
was
show.
so amazing, and you were impressed by how awesome it was going to be.
It's so much better than you think it's going to be.
I thought it had a lot of potential. I was excited to watch it.
I'll tell you
Christian.
I'm like a little kid. Here's how I've decided.
Marvel TV people are going crazy right. They're like, why are they talking about Titans?
That's right. We'll talk.
Because
Yeah.
we love everything.
Well, no, usually
I do.
Actually, sometimes I'll badmouth some things that I didn't like from the DC universe, and I don't mean the streaming service. I mean their extended cinematic. And then people get mad that it's like, why are you trashing them? Because I didn't like it. I'm on the show where I don't have to
Entitled to my
pretend
opinion.
that I liked Batman vs Superman so much that I need to see it 3 times. But anyway, so yeah, there's all these services, and then the Disney Plus. And they're very specific. Even now, like almost a year out from it launching, they want you to know it's going to be less than Netflix. And what I've heard is a price point, I think, of $5.99.
Yeah, $6 is
yeah, which you're like,
That's not bad.
You're like, that's not so bad, and that's
not bad.
smart because a year later maybe it's $8.99. But to get people in early, that doesn't really sound that bad. So it is a factor, but not in the way that people initially think. Like, well, these shows are going to go onto Disney Plus. I feel like that's very unlikely to happen. And we were talking beforehand that there's also the theory that Disney has a majority share, I think, in Hulu now.
Yes.
So couldn't those shows go on over there? What do you say to people who are hopeful of that, Mark?
I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
I don't think that there is. I want to be careful. I'm not saying I heard this isn't happening, but of course I'm not going to be disingenuous and pretend that I haven't heard anything or that there's not clear signals around. And right now my understanding is, and everything I've been led to believe is, these shows are ending. You had the shows and they're going to be brought to conclusions, and it's done, and that's it. And you're not going to see these iterations of the shows picked up and taken somewhere else. So that's my understanding of it. I don't expect it to show up on Hulu. I think they have so much content that they haven't developed into live action that Marvel is going to be bringing. When you're going to have a Loki TV series and a Black Widow TV series and a Winter Soldier TV series, Scarlet Witch, I love these shows personally. I mean, obviously, I've written about it at Forbes. I've called them the Netflix shows are the gold standard of live action superhero TV shows. They're as good as it gets in that regard. They're just fantastic. But I don't think that Marvel, they've got so much else they're doing. It's just like, look, we know how good those are. They already exist. They had their run. There's, we were talking before the show, 146 hours of content that's there. It will still be there. You can go watch it. But those numbers, they were still strong, but they were declining season to season, and it wasn't insubstantial declines. So would you pick up a show that's viewership had been steadily declining like that and then move it over and continue to pump $40 million a season into it? I think that they're going to say that's money we will put into developing some other new programs, perhaps. So I don't think that these shows, we're going to see these characters in this version with these creative teams and actors again.
And one of the reasons I liked your piece is that you agreed with what I was saying over the last couple of weeks, which is the idea that Netflix is like, I lowballed it. It's 146 hours. I was like, look, we have 100 hours, but see, we have 146 hours, which you did the math in the Forbes piece. It's between 8,500 and 8,800 minutes, depending on how many episodes we get of Punisher and Jessica Jones next year. So more than 8,000 minutes, regardless. And they're like, we have plenty of Marvel superhero stuff that people are going to find next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We have it already. What difference is it going to make if there's, 26 more episodes total, like how many more were they ultimately going to do, because of how expensive it was. And they got great tax breaks. I was reading it. I don't think this was your piece, but I was reading that they actually changed something in the filming code tax break specifically for these Marvel shows. So, they were very accommodating. And I think that it's still that expensive though. So it's like, what are we spending the money for? Let's develop the next Stranger Things, the next thing that people are talking about in that way, So I completely understand that, that as much as I love the shows and I want to see them more, I just felt like from a business standpoint, which would be why this is in Forbes, is sort of the business approach of like, why would we spend the money on it? Zia, what are people saying in the chat? Do they like the tone we're taking that sorry you're not going to see these ever again, or they think like but?
I mean, pretty much everyone's been kind of thinking along the same lines, honestly. I'm going to just bring this back to DC just for 1 minute because Ivan said this.
Do so at your peril.
He said Titan rocks. He said marketing screwed Titans. The actual show is good.
The show is very good. If you like I think if you like the 80s Teen Titans comic, then you're going to like the show. It's very, it's
like that
people
that
who
like
love
Marv
that.
Wolfman era of the Teen Titans.
The
what I was going to say
Wolfman
before
era,
is because
it's pretty good.
I approached it like a child. I asked for it for Christmas. So if I get the DC universe, then I'll watch it then.
There you go.
Anyway.
But pretty much everyone is kind of along those same lines. Ghost8386 says streaming wars, which is I think ultimately what that's going to end up being. That's more Titan stuff.
Well, and I don't know how much you've written about this, but when you start streamlining it like this, look, we all know that there are ways to see this content without paying for it. What I do know is that because of the nature of the way that Star Trek Discovery was rolled out on CBS All Access, they were a lot more diligent about having those. They would search out those links and things. Not that you couldn't still find it, but from what I was told by people who did, because I work here, I didn't have to pay for CBS All Access because I do Star Trek Weekly. So I didn't have that problem. But I understand that people look to cut corners, which I'm never in favor of because of just the amount of money it takes to create good content and all the people involved. But look, I understand that it happens. And when you streamline it, or not the opposite of streamline, when you're so fragmented and there's all these services, I feel like the demand for piracy will increase that much. And how much concern there must be for all these streaming services, like, yeah, man, they're just gonna probably try and steal what we're working so hard and spending all this money on.
Well, I think something to keep in mind is how much it costs for you to watch these shows. How much do you pay for internet each month? What's your internet?
It's a good question because I have cable. It's bundled, but I think it's $50. But I'm actually not sure.
I think I pay either $50 to $80.
Yeah.
I know I pay for the good internet.
Yeah.
So everybody that has internet is paying for it by the month, and a lot of people are paying, you go down south. My family lives down south, and you really get skewered, and you're screwed over because so much of it's rural. They charge a lot more for access. It's in the best interest. All these streaming services, and we're talking about multi-billion-dollar industries, all using it. it's in everyone's interest who relies on the internet to make money to get internet turned into a publicly owned thing,
Right.
that you don't pay for access to anymore. Cities, and I think it's going to start happening relatively soon. You're going to see the big cities on the coast first, and you're going to see states. They're going to start putting up towers and providing free internet. You're going to have Wi-Fi, and then so you won't have to pay for your Wi-Fi anymore. I think that's coming relatively soon, by which I mean like the next 5 to 10 years. So I think while the stuff with the streaming service is fighting, the consumers are all going to eventually are going to have an extra like $25 to $30 a month in their pocket when they're not paying for internet anymore. And everyone who relies on streaming or internet and wants people to have access to it, it's in their interest to lobby Congress and to lobby the states to make this happen. And they outnumber, and I think especially with the mergers with like AT&T, they're not just in the business of providing you internet anymore. They're in the interest of providing you what you're getting over the internet. And they can get you to spend a lot more money if they stop charging you for the internet.
Right.
So that you can spend it on all the other crap that they want you to buy, right? I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the internet and all the different networks out there, let's take a moment for a very important message from our friend Xia Anderson.
Hey, AfterBuzzers! Our network produces after shows for nearly all of your favorite TV shows, from dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and more. There is no network that works harder to serve television fans. But we need your help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that is tailor-made for you, and you'll help AfterBuzz continue to grow. And if you're worried about pesky notifications, do not be, because they're optional and you can turn them off. So hit that subscribe button now for this channel, right now, guys. And check out our other AfterBuzz YouTube channels as well. Let us know you did so in the comments, and we'll thank you on air. For now, thank you for being the best fans and for helping us be the ESPN of TV Talk.
And if someone subscribes to this channel on AfterBuzz, then they could very well see Xia on the Doctor Who After Show and the Sabrina After Show. Although I think that's ended now, right?
Tomorrow is our last episode, and then there is a Christmas special, although I'm not sure exactly when we're going to be doing that one, but I will let everyone know.
Oh, that must be nice, a show that does a Christmas special.
That does a Christmas special,
Anyway,
not a New Year's one,
you touched briefly on the Mark Millar universe, and he, to maybe more casual, comic book, consumers, in terms of watching movies and things, he's the guy who created Kick-Ass. Now, Kick-Ass would not be part of that because obviously that's already been licensed. But he has all these properties, so I think that's sort of, other people are talking about it, but it's a big deal. They're like, yeah, we have this already. We're going to develop that. We're going to cultivate that.
Yeah.
People are going to be excited about that. And people aren't going to forget about these Marvel Netflix shows, but you're going to distract them so that they stop thinking about them for a minute,
Yeah, with Mark Millar, and I don't know Mark Millar, and he didn't pay me to say nice things about him, because there's always people that call me a shill. The last few days I've been getting called a Marvel shill and a Disney shill at the same time, and people that are angry about
Is it because
various
you said
articles.
you liked Iron Fist both seasons?
No, I got some hate for that too, but that was completely different hate.
You gave season 1 a B. That's not like you said you loved it. It's just
Yeah.
But
But I was with you on that. I love that you wrote that, by the way. How much you just sort of praised the entire shows in general, because people hated so much on certain shows, and I thought that they were all really good and enjoyable. So I like that you know.
Yeah. So you're not a shill for Mark Millar.
Yeah, I'm not a shill for Mark Millar, but now I'm in a shill for Mark Millar. He's one of the great modern comic book writers.
Sure.
He's really has a great original ideas and unique ideas, and I know that if you've got a deal with Mark Millar and you're developing multiple series based on his content, and because Netflix is they're doing comics, that they're releasing comics for these shows, and then also the shows. So it's gonna be based in comics, and then he's gonna do additional content. So he's gonna keep creating new things for them, and they're gonna get TV shows, they're gonna get movies. So I think that they're looking at it as, look, we have a really large base of subscribers now. A lot of those people watch the Marvel shows, but they also like our other shows like Altered Carbon and other things. So that viewership overlap with things like that, and Haunting of Hill House, which is just mind-bogglingly good. They've got this Mark Millar stuff. If I was Netflix, I'd feel pretty confident that yeah, it sucks to not have those shows be made anymore and to lose those people. And a lot of people who made terrific Marvel programs are going to be gone. But from a business standpoint, we've got these other new shows, and we're pretty sure the people that like those shows are going to like these shows too. So it's just a question of creating good content, and Netflix has shown they can do that. And I don't think they're going to lose subscribers over it. I think we're all heartbroken about what happened, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I really, really love those shows. I've watched some of the seasons of some of those shows multiple times. Jessica Jones and the first two seasons of Daredevil, I've watched 2 or 3 times through.
Yeah, I don't binge anything, mostly because I have 2 small kids and it's really hard to do. But I watched the first 10 hours of Jessica Jones in a day, and I can't usually. I was just like, my son was little, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll change your diaper. It's all right. David Tennant's not that scary. He was like 6 months old. I'm like, it's fine. Yeah, we'll have nightmares later, but it's fine. So just how great these shows have been. That's why it's disappointing. But here's another way to look at it. If they had made a series of Daredevil movies, how many would they have made? 3, 4? All right. So you're talking maybe 8 to 10 hours. We have 39 hours of Daredevil already, and that's not counting the Defenders, So you have an incredible amount, and as disappointing as it is, but it's just we have so much, and it did get so much better, I mean, I liked season 2, which you're saying you liked as well. People are kind of like, oh, I like season 1 and season 3 is great, and they just sort of skip like, no, season 2 was really good because they had the Punisher in it. And sort of you were talking about it being a top flight superhero show. I've said this multiple times on this show and elsewhere that there's a scene with Frank and Daredevil in the cemetery in season 2, and they're just talking to each other, and I'm like, no, that's just great. That's not great superhero writing. That's just great drama, great acting. That's better than anything I had seen in years. It was so good and so compelling, and I guess we can be excited and just hope that whatever else we get can be on that level, and that the creators responsible for these shows are going to move on to something else. I don't quite know what, but I certainly will follow.
I'd offer them a job wherever if I was Marvel or DC.
Yeah,
I'd be offering these folks jobs now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, both of those companies have plenty in the hopper, as it were. Now, we've talked about a lot of the reasons Netflix canceled the Marvel shows. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that was in there? I think we've got to all the key points, but is there anything else that you feel like we maybe skipped over or didn't really focus on, or it's so many different contributing factors?
Yeah, I mean, we can. It's not in the article, but obviously, I think a really crucial point of all of this to remember that explains what's happened, but also why things are going to probably happen the way they do going forward. With the Disney Plus service, now those shows on Disney Plus, who's going to be running those? Kevin Feige's going to get oversight of that. That's going to be handled now by Kevin Feige and the people that he picks and puts in charge of that, rather than like these shows. Kevin Feige didn't really have oversight of these shows. It was Marvel TV was making these shows, and I don't want to, I'm not into the soap opera and the drama.
No, that's fine.
But business of all that. But just objectively speaking, we have to be realistic and honest and note that with the shows, with the televised shows kind of moving in that direction and heading toward a streaming service that's going to have content like, from the movies, we're going to have the actors and the characters from the films on TV. They're going to be putting so much effort and attention into that, and what they can do will be so much bigger realistically than what is possible on network television or even maybe in a partnership with Netflix. So they're looking at doing something different now, and when you're putting your attention in that direction, I think the situation between Marvel TV and Marvel Films and how this is played out and how most of the live action content is moving over there is just an inevitable evolution and it's the next stage for Disney. It's what was going to have to happen. They had to have their own streaming service, and that meant their content was going to inevitably move off of anyone else's. So however it played out, eventually all the Marvel stuff and all the Disney stuff and all the Lucasfilm stuff and all the Pixar stuff was going to end up in Disney's hands and under the oversight and control of Disney companies and leadership. It wasn't going to be out there somewhere else. So this was always going to happen. It was a natural progression, and it's natural for Netflix to be increasingly more interested in IP that they own and can exploit and use, the way that any other company would, instead of relying on other people's brands to come in and partner with them to do it.
That makes sense. Do you think now, because they're going to be putting a lot into these shows, and like you said, they're going to be like the large screen actors on TV, do you think it's going to have the same sort of quality as the movies? Obviously, it's not going to be quite as big. They might not have the same exact kind of budget, but there's just a certain quality that you expect when you go to the movies. It's a little bit different with TV. Do you think it's going to be more similar?
Well, yeah, I do. I think you're right that we go just psychologically, you sit down and you don't even have to think it through like literally in your head, but you're conscious of the fact that you're watching a TV show, not a movie. So your brain makes the instant adjustments of expectations.
Yeah.
But what you can do on TV now has gotten so good that I think what we're going to see, they're bringing the movie characters and actors into it. Well, we know from the Netflix shows that it's possible to create writing content and character-driven stories that are every bit as compelling as movies. So, because I would put these Netflix shows, I would say that they're every bit as good and better than plenty of live-action superhero movies that get released, So I think it's entirely possible. If you have that quality of creative teams and then you bring in the people from the movie starring in it, I don't see any reason you can't have a TV show that's like a small 1-hour version of a movie.
Right, especially when you think about the modern day technology, just go back, 10, especially 15, 20 years ago, your TV was this square little, in some cases like 19-inch little, literally a box, and it was not high definition. Now it looks like the movies, and it just, the expectation, the standards are so much higher. And as you can see from the streaming shows, I referenced Star Trek Discovery before. The budget on that was insane. They spent so much money on every episode, not just on the pilot. A lot of times that's like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a perfect example. I actually like the show, but they spent so much money on the pilot.
It's real good.
Second episode, you're like, wait, what happened? Where's all the bells and whistles? The car doesn't fly anymore. Just like so much changed, and that happens all the time. And so I feel like you won't see any kind of level up. It's like we're going to spend a lot of money, especially because these are event series. These are limited series. These aren't like, man, we got to do 5 years of Loki. I can see them being that same cinematic quality because if it's not, people will definitely be like, what am I paying for? Like if a different actor played Loki, you'd be like, well, why do I want to watch this guy be Loki?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
not.
They were smart right away. They're like, oh no, we're using all the real actors. Don't worry.
Yeah, you don't want Kmart Loki if you're paying for a monthly thing, and we're gonna have a Loki TV series.
Right.
Or a cartoon version even. I would have been so disappointed.
Well, I mean, a cartoon version could be cool, but I know what
I'm
you're
sure
saying.
it could be
that's
cool.
that's not as exciting. Sort of to put a pin or put a button on the Netflix series. When Luke Cage and Iron Fist were canceled, there was an idea that was kind of prevalent on the internet, and we talked about it on the show. What about the idea of these characters turning up on, say, a Daughters of the Dragon or Heroes for Hire show? Those aren't shows that were sold to Netflix, but because they have these characters, is that the sort of do you think that's a realistic expectation now, or is it just it's all tied up in the same thing, right? Because I feel like
everyone's gonna hate me if I answer bluntly and honestly.
I would love those shows, but I don't think they're gonna happen for the same reasons that those shows.
I don't think it will, and I think it's important. There's a lot of I've never seen the contract, so I'm speaking theoretically, but. When they make a deal with a company like Netflix to do some shows, and you've got creative teams and it's developed a certain way, and there's a degree of ownership that your partner in that business deal will have over that content. That content's going to stay on Netflix, and Netflix will be allowed to continue to run it because they were part of making and paying for these shows. So for Disney to take all the people that were used and developed and created in those shows and then use them purely in their own Disney owned and operated, Netflix doesn't get any money out of it or anything manner, would be difficult and would require a lot of, you'd have a lot of deals to work out and a lot of contracts to sign and stuff, and it would probably mean some money would have to be paid toward Netflix and the people who created those characters originally, as well as the people writing it now. So you're paying more than one creative team and more than one company to make something that you're going to be using, and they're not doing anything for it. Just generally speaking, that's not necessarily a great business model. So I would expect that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the unions involved in these things, like just the Writers Guild alone, I mean, I in a past life, I worked on Law and Order SVU, and Richard
Nice.
Belzer's character, John Munch, was created by Paul Adonacio in the pilot for Homicide: Life on the Street in 1993. And the reason why that's relevant is that he gets character payment for a character he created. At that point, it was already 15 years. And he still had to get paid every time he was in an episode. So these things go on forever. These characters go on and on and on. So all of a sudden you're like, well, look at what we're doing. We're paying all this money to people that didn't do anything, which is great if you create a character. But if you're like, oh, what are we doing? Like, what, why are we doing this? Why don't we do a different idea? Why don't we get something else? We're Disney. We own Marvel. Let's see what else there is.
And there's so much content and storylines that they can pull from. It's almost never ending. I feel like they could do it forever.
Yes.
And speaking of the Disney Plus service, did you have a thought on that? I didn't want to.
No, that's
okay.
all right.
The Disney Plus service, they did. It's a rumor, but that Scarlet Witch series, this is another topic entirely, is that it is allegedly going to be a Vision and Scarlet Witch series, which personally I'm very excited about.
I'm in.
Because when I was a young man reading comics, there was a great Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries.
Yes.
They have a baby. Well, they actually have twins. It gets retconned away because like everything, eventually you decide like, oh, this great story didn't happen. But what I remember was a great story, and I always liked the two of them together. And when we saw them in Infinity War, I'm like, oh, this is so great, because obviously we're never going to get a Vision and Scarlet Witch movie. So I liked just those couple minutes. And then it's like, well, how about a miniseries? If that's true, I was excited to see what they were going to do with a Scarlet Witch miniseries. But if it's a Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries, so you also have Paul Bettany on board, I mean, the potential for that series, it all of a sudden it goes in so many different directions. Mm-hmm. It's also going to be a lot more expensive. But that's besides the point. So, I don't know, Xia, does that have you more excited?
Yes, it has me more excited. My dream is, and I doubt this is going to happen. Actually, that's not true. It could happen.
You never know now.
Is seeing them do an iteration of House of M, because I just loved that story so much, and that's leading from Wanda having her babies taken away, and she creates anyway. It's just very cool, and seeing that on a small screen, I think would be I think would be really fun.
I know, and just seeing how they're able to incorporate the currently Fox-owned properties, the X-Men and things like that.
I would love to see more of the X-Men.
Yeah. What
House of M could be a good way to work in the X-Men.
Yeah,
that Scarlet Witch, something happened on the show and she decided to like change reality, and it created, instead of doing it the reverse, taking the no more mutants, and instead she does something and that's the creation of mutant. But then you ruin the whole idea of like, how's Wolverine been around for 100 years or whatever. So
right,
but
exactly.
It's a mess.
It's a
they
mess.
can figure it out.
They're smart enough. They'll get it figured out.
Yeah.
And because obviously because you work with Forbes, there's the business standpoint here. Getting those Fox properties, which I just the money making potential. Obviously Disney, there's a lot of reasons to buy Fox, but that alone, just to be like, oh yeah, well now we can have X-Men, and my hope is that one day we'll actually get a good Fantastic Four movie, because we haven't yet. But I love those characters so much, and I'm just hopeful that we'll see it one day. But
it'll happen now. Marvel will do it, and they'll do it right. I'm very happy that the Fantastic Four was the one that mattered the most to me to get back under Marvel. X-Men, Fox was doing a great job with X-Men. We had a whole iteration of it, and it's like, that's a whole superhero universe of its own.
Yeah.
And it kind of solves the problem of like, these superheroes get persecuted, but then like all the other superheroes aren't getting persecuted, which was always kind of a weird aspect of that dynamic. So I was okay with that division. Fantastic Four needs to be in the MCU.
Yeah.
The X-Men, I'm happy they're going to be there, because we're going to get some like we're going to get the suits, it's going to look like the X-Men, a movie titled after the comics and everything. So I'm excited that it's going to happen, but I was very happy with what Fox did with it. So the Fantastic Four was absolutely, to me, the most important property.
Yeah, I was always a little disappointed at the idea that Spider-Man was never going to be able to play nice with everyone. So once Sony realized, like, let's see what we can do to kind of, make these movies good. I don't know. I actually liked all the Spider-Man movies except for Spider-Man 3. But I like both of the Andrew Garfield movies.
I did too.
So did I.
I'll die. I'll die on the hill for Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2. I've had so many debates with. I don't to this day understand like why people look at that movie and don't like it. And it's got some flaws.
Yeah.
The Green Goblin elements at the end are flawed, but most of it, you've got Electro modeled after the protagonist in a classic iconic novel, The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
And that's with all of the racial implications retained for the character in Amazing Spider-Man. That's pretty spectacular, no pun intended. And Garfield's Spider-Man was terrific in it.
And I've always been a big Mary Jane fan, but just Peter and Gwen in those two movies, I'm like, oh, they don't even have to do any superhero stuff. I'll just kind of watch them.
It was
like
great.
Yeah,
chemistry.
they were so good together. Yeah. So the fact that it's like they've got Spidey back on board. He can be in Avengers movies as we've seen, and just the idea that the Fantastic Four could be there. And look, it means so much more money. So why wouldn't they want to do it right? But anyway, we haven't checked in on the chat in a while. What's happening in there? Are they still mad that we talked about Titans for a minute and a half?
No.
Because I would be if I watched this show. Well, it's all right if there's.
It's just a lot of talk. Actually, there was a big conversation about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Everybody's saying you can't forget Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s great.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great.
We-
I did go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I did an article on ranking all of the 50 best superhero TV show live action of all time in order of best.
Yeah.
And then like the worst ones. And Agents. I got a lot of flack for ranking Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as high as I did. But
How high was it?
I don't remember exactly what its position was, but it was pretty high on the list.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was a lot of good stuff out there. So
There is. I have to ask you about your opinion. This is just for me, and I apologize to everyone in advance. What did you think of Cloak and Dagger?
I have not seen Cloak and Dagger yet.
Okay.
I'm waiting and going to binge Cloak and... I like to wait, and usually I'll binge entire... Binging has ruined me on watching...
Yeah,
The
that's
Good
true.
Place is one of the only... I'll obsessively watch it week to week. Other than that,
for
there's
my
almost
wife and I,
nothing
that's
can do
basically
that
the
way.
same thing. The Good Place is the one show that we keep up with. It's also, after commercials are gone, it's like 23 minutes or whatever. So it's easy. But yeah, that's the one show we do that with. Well,
Yeah.
But so the reason
you should
Zia
watch it.
asks is because Zia felt like
I got a lot of hate for this.
she was too old for Cloak and
I
Dagger.
really didn't like it.
I'm
Okay.
I'm a good.
Just personally.
I'm 13 years older than you, and I loved it. Because I like those characters, and I thought that they were so well cast. I like the show, and
Is it well done? Do you think that it's well done, or is it just you don't think you can't
No.
relate to it?
I think I think that for me, they were trying way too hard to make it racy and make it.
Oh, that's
It was
unfortunate.
on freeform,
and I do
don't think that
I
that
do
was the right
agree with that
platform.
part of it. That they definitely, because it's on freeform, there's a line that you're not going to be able to cross.
Right, and they really tried though. They were like, this is going to be daring and racy, and we're going to try to make it artsy. And to me, it just didn't land. And the soundtrack
Is awful,
Oh.
but that's
really?
because I hate music that
Oh.
is from the 21st century. I
Mostly
only
so do
look.
I.
We open with Judas Priest for a reason. Look, I only like music from the 20th century. It's just me. It's my own personal thing.
Arcade Fire?
They're okay, but yeah, it's like a lot of times, like I'll try and think of bands that I'm like,
The Coup?
I'm like, I actually don't even know that, but it's like I'm like, oh, what about the White Stripes? And you're like, well, the White Stripes first album came in 1999. I'm like, all right, see, that proves my point. But it makes it brings us to our final thing, and Anthony, we'll wrap up after we talk for a minute about the Runaways season 2 trailer. I did send the link in the email, and that sort of ties back. Now, Zia, you have not yet watched the Runaways season 1,
No, I
but
haven't.
I have put it on your homework list.
I know.
The reason why I think you'll like that a little bit more is because it's Hulu. It's not racy, but they swear, and it's a little I don't know. It's like PG-13 as opposed to Cloak and Dagger's PG, And I think it was really well done. They did an amazing job casting as many children. I don't know, they're probably all in their early 20s, but these people who look like teenagers, they looked, and they were so good and they worked well together. I think they did a great job. So this trailer was released during this past week, and we'll talk a little bit over it. Now, I'm the only one here because you were telling me before, Mark, that you also haven't seen the Runaways season 1, right?
Yes. Yeah. I haven't
So it's fine. So, but it's all right because that's the whole idea. So we'll watch season 2. Now, neither of you have seen season 1. Maybe it'll make you think like, all right, I got to watch that
There's
season
so
1.
much stuff out
Yeah,
there.
and
There's so
season
much.
2
I have
is
to
gonna
binge.
season 2 is gonna be the Netflix style where it all comes out at once. What they did last season,
Oh,
was
that's
that
great.
they had the
Okay,
first
yeah.
3 come out, and then it was every week. So you had to kind of keep tabs on it, especially because I was doing the show. But so I think when you get it all at once, and it's like, well, you can binge season 1 and then go right into season 2. So Anthony, let's take a look at the little bit that we have here, and it'll probably look really crazy because of some of the weird elements of the show. Well, not that. That's kids running. It's called the Runaways. You probably know what's going to happen. But wait, what's in the shopping cart? Oh my God, it's a dinosaur. Well, that doesn't even make sense. But it's
Is
amazing.
this Jurassic Park?
Kind of, yeah.
Jurassic Runaway.
Yeah. So we're seeing sort of it's a really interesting premise. I don't know how familiar you guys are even with the comics or the conceit of the whole idea, but there are these kids who have powers and various abilities or access to technology, and they are they're on the run from their own parents basically. So I think that it took a little while to set up this world that they're going to be in. Season 1, it kind of was like getting really good and then it stopped. So this is the point in the story where you maybe would have hoped that they hit earlier in season 1. So I think that it's really at it. Just I don't know. I can't wait to see what they do with all of this because you get the impression.
Liked season 1?
I liked season 1. Yeah,
How do you compare it to the Netflix shows?
It's different because it definitely skews younger than those. It's not as dark. There are dark moments, but it's a little bit lighter, because it's a dark world, but it's still mostly kids, So
Is it similar to the CW DC shows? Like
I would
Supergirl
say
and Flash and stuff?
it's more mature than those. It would
Okay.
be a nice way to say that. Yeah.
Because I actually really like both the Flash and Arrow.
Okay.
Could not get into Supergirl though.
I'm a big
this
fan.
is-
I love the Supergirl show, and it's just like it's pure comic book. Like it's all.
I
for the
watched a
fan-
lot
all-
of
for all
Supergirl the
ages
first
com-
season and kind of fell off. But so anyway, I think that if you like those shows, you very well would like season 1 of the Runaways. And if you don't know that much about the characters, I think it'll actually be a little bit more of a surprise. Like knowing where it's going is still interesting, but if you're not that familiar with it, Xia, I think you will enjoy it. And so season 2 will drop in its entirety on December 21st. So,
Got a little time.
but not much.
Not
And I'm
much.
sure in your head you're like, oh, but I got these like 8 other things that I need to try
The
and watch.
Haunting of Hill House.
Right.
I still want to watch.
People keep
that
asking
really
me about that. I
badly.
haven't had time to watch it yet.
No, but I've heard it's so good.
It's
There's
pretty
that-
spectacular.
there's that-
It's really amazing.
There's that
Like
Orson
Bladt
Welles
and Xia
movie that's on
movie.
Netflix now that I want to see.
Which movie?
There's this Orson Welles movie that was supposed to come out. He could never get the funding, and apparently there's a documentary about it. It's all on Netflix. All these things that I need to watch. What did you say, Anthony? About was it
You're
Haunting
right.
at Hill House?
They have so much stuff.
Oh yeah, Mike Flanagan. He's like coming up in the horror game. He did Ouija, the origin of evil, and also that mirror Oculus, which I thought was really cool too. And also Before I Wake, I believe. So
All right, and Anthony,
that too.
if people want to hear
they're
more
great.
about horror, where can they find you talking about horror?
Yes, we are on hiatus. Thank you for the plug. We are on hiatus
Whoops.
right now. It's
Okay.
all good. No, perfect. But yeah, horror movie news every Tuesday. But we'll be coming back January 7th, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, and we'll be kicking off the new year with Glass the following week. So it's coming out in January, which will be fun to talk about. But this is neither here nor there.
No,
but
that's
thank you
all
for the
right.
plug. Every Tuesdays on the on Popcorn Talk Network, horror movie news.
Our sister network, Popcorn Talk. Yes, I
Yes,
know
sir.
you're very passionate about horror movies, and I would love to have time for Haunting of Hill House, but I haven't yet. Anyway, well, we've strayed a little bit from the Marvel Universe as we talk here, but it's been a great conversation. Is there any final words from the chat, or they're just having their own show in there, which is fine, by the way.
They are. They're talking now. They're talking about the other Netflix shows. Ivan Soto really wants me to watch Travelers. I will try.
I don't even know what that is.
There's so many good shows. There's so many that it's hard. Like, even in the ones that they recommend to me are always pretty spot on, but then I go and I look at other stuff, and there's so much, and there's things that I find that like Ozark wasn't one of the ones they were initially recommending to me, and then when I saw Ozark, I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's really good, and he should, by the way, play Norman Osborn in the Spider-Man movies when they cast Norman Osborn, right?
I mean, Jason Bateman?
Yes, Bateman would be.
He would be perfect.
He would be such a good one. I would love him in that role.
I would never have even thought that until you said it.
Yeah. Because because if you're gonna play the Norman Osborn part of it, look, I think that Willem Dafoe, that was a fun, scenery chewing performance that I really enjoyed. But if you're going to sort of do a little bit more of a subtle, like, not be Green Goblin right away, that actually could be very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've gone long, as we often do, but thank you, Anthony, for letting us do so. Mark, we really appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now that we know you're willing to come to the Valley, we'll probably make you come back again. But obviously, you're on Twitter at Mark Hughes Films. Where else do people find you? Where are some other places they can see you?
Obviously at Forbes. You can always read me at Forbes, and you can find me as co-host of the Superhero News channel on YouTube with Sean Gerber is the host of that show, and a lot of my writing's on Quora, and sometimes it's featured on Huffington Post and Slate and other places. So yeah, thank you for having me on the show. This is great.
Oh yeah, no, it's always fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's always fun to have anybody that's not just the two of us saying the same things every week.
We really do talk to each other a lot, and the problem is that our opinions are very similar on a lot of things.
I know we don't have anything to disagree on. That's true.
I usually only, in terms of fans, I love an opportunity to directly kind of interact with Marvel fans, because I love Marvel, but everyone thinks of me as a DC guy because I love DC as well.
Sure.
I'm a huge Batman fan, and so I grew up on comics from both companies. So I get, but the DC fans are the ones who what I'm most asked about, and when I'm brought on to shows, it's usually DC stuff. I don't get asked on the Marvel shows very much, like this one. So thank you for bringing me on and giving me a chance to talk about it.
No, we were
huge
happy to have
Marvel
you,
fan.
and I'll keep an eye on what you're working on, and always be like, come on back to the Valley a Sunday at 10:00. Xia, where do people find you?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Xia_land. It's XIA_land. And as I was saying, tomorrow is actually our final episode of the Sabrina After Show. I believe we're doing this at 9 p.m.
And Xia would not want me to promote this, but I'm going to anyway. If you look back, you can find her on the Chipperson podcast from a few weeks ago. It was amazing.
Actually,
and
promote that.
I was so happy to see you on there. It was so much fun.
It was awesome.
With Chip Chipperson, who, if you don't know, just go find it. He looks a lot like Jim Norton, let's put it that way.
He's not, though.
No, they're different guys, but he looks suspiciously like
him.
Very and you can, of course, follow me at ChristianDMZ, Twitter and Instagram. I have my own personal podcast, The Blackcast, BLADTCAST, and you can find me Tuesdays and Thursdays on the Dennis Miller Option with Dennis Miller on Podcast One. That is all we have for this week. Thank you to Anthony in the booth at TonyBTony_. We will see you next Sunday, but until then, Excelsior!
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.